Okay, reparations. This should be an interesting one. How do you feel about reparations? I mean, obviously the current administration is not trying to do this, but how do you feel about reparations? And do you believe that your candidate can move forward with this? Let's start with Cesare. I hope I said it right this time. Cesare, you're the Kamala supporter. Do you believe that there will be a pathway from Kamala for reparations?
Want to be honest? You want me to be honest, or you want me, to tell you?
We all know the quote, but if you want to say it, you can say it.
We know the answer now. We know the answer now, man.
Black people.
Or you want me to say how I feel about reparations? But I'm just being honest. Nah, unfortunately, I'm a big proponent of reparations. I am tired of hearing this whole thing about commission. I know one of the things that Joe Biden did an executive order was the the racial justice order, which was in hindsight word salad. It did absolutely nothing. I mean, since they've been in office, HR 40 that was introduced by Conyers has come out of committee, but it has been stalled since 2021. I wish this administration come forth stronger about reparations, but unfortunately on this particular situation, I cannot defend them.
So why?
I'm gonna be honest.
We should probably start killing some Palestinians, and we might get some money. I don't know. Maybe we try that.
Right.
Yeah. But again, you can't say because you didn't have to look at Congress. Like Joe Biden's not sitting there and signing laws, sending money to the Middle East. Like it's just
but he definitely overruled. Hold on. So he overruled a whole like congressional block to send money to Ukraine, though. Like they were like, nah, and he was like, yeah, and he sent the money. So
yes, he did.
And he overstepped Congress in order to give weapons to Israel, though. Twice.
No, I mean, he didn't overstep. He did kind of forcefully come out and say, "Y'all need to make this happen."
So you think? Like, so you approve? You approve of reparations, but you don't believe that. You don't believe that Kamala, because that's who you're supporting, will push that forward. Is that what you're saying?
I don't necessarily. Well, for it to happen, let's be perfectly clear. She has to have. To give it a chance, at least a Democratic-led Congress. If we're just focusing on electing Kamala and not giving her the tools to at least criticize her, then it's going to become a stalemate. Because we can put Kamala in there, but if everything is led by Republicans, it's definitely not going to go anywhere. I would rather take a chance on having her in there and having a Democratic Congress and see what happens, and then we can kick that ass, and then have her in there with a Republican-led Congress, and then
Hey, Cesare, didn't she say that she wasn't going to do anything for Black people specifically?
1 second, Nico.
First
she just made.
Don't take that comment out of context, because people.
I've
been kicking people ass about that comment. So let me just chime in just to let you know. Just let you know, Cesare.
I don't know if I can curse. I apologize.
She did make a statement recently about reparations, and she said that she would put forward a study of it. And a study, and this really pisses me off because a study is just a stonewall tactic. Studies are where bills go to die, which means that she is not in support of cash reparations. She has said this publicly before in interviews before they won in 2020. So she is not going to push that forward. That is just a stonewall tactic. One thing I didn't get to ask you when you came in a little bit later, why are you supporting Kamala Harris?
Okay, so respectfully, I did say that I did make that comment and say that she made the comment about the whole reparation thing and the whole word salad. I did make that was one of my first points about it being word salad.
Right, but why secondly, are you supporting her again?
I'm supporting her because not only of the lesser two evils, but when it comes to my rights as a black man, I would not leave it in the hands of Donald Trump. I would rather leave it in the hands of Kamala Harris.
What rights are you referring to? I'm just curious.
So I'm thinking about the Voting Rights Act. I'm thinking about the George Floyd Policing Act. And this is coming from somebody who wears the uniform. So I support the George Floyd Policing Act. This is when it comes to women's rights. Not only am I a black man, but I have brothers. I have sisters, trans men who I call brothers. However, y'all want to go into that conversation. I have aunts. So women's rights is very important, and she's been a hawk on women's rights. When it comes to the possibility of appointing somebody on the Supreme Court, she's perfect to be in office because, again, there is a possibility, and Alito just came out with a statement saying that he wants to resign after this election, that she has the possibility of possibly putting somebody up for the Supreme Court, 2 to 3 people on the Supreme Court. If you look at Roberts, if you look at Thomas and Alito. So that's just...
Okay,
in hindsight, we only got 30 seconds. So that's in hindsight one of my reasons why.
Okay, I was just curious because I did look at her website again, and I did notice that Kamala Harris, it's been 10 days, and she still has no policies on her platform. She has a donate button. She has a store, but she has no policies on her platform. So I don't even know what Kamala Harris is running on. And it just, I don't want to stay here. I want to move on to somebody else. But that's weird to me. I feel like this is just vibes. I don't see no policies.
So at one point, she wasn't even, respectfully, she wasn't even considered a candidate at one point.
That's a whole
She wasn't.
Come on, bro.
She was.
She's the vice president. She's the vice president.
Right. She's the vice president, and she's at the behest. Unfortunately, she's at the behest of Biden and whatever it is his agenda was. Now that she is the candidate, she has the chance to now formulate her own platform.
It's been 10 years,
she just
had 4 years to think about it.
Time out.
She didn't have 4 years.
Go ahead. She didn't have 4 years. She didn't have 4 years because she's at the behest of she's at the behest of Biden and what his agenda is, and she pushes his agenda.
So you're telling me?
Time out.
Hold on, I might, y'all. Hey, listen. I'm in a different time zone, so my brain be fuzzy sometimes. Didn't she run in 2020?
You're only 1 hour behind Eastern.
I know, but hey, listen, don't do that. Don't do that.
You went by Eastern 2020. I was about to catch her too. Like, wait a minute.
Didn't she run in 2020? She ran for president, right?
Didn't get a single vote.
She did run in 2019.
Also, doesn't she have a month?
And she became the right. But everything that was 2019 issues is not everything about 2024 issues. Things have changed.
Reparations has been awesome.
Time out.
It's time out for the excuses.
Time out. Please, let's let me get a word in. Like,
you got a lot of words in, to be honest, bro.
Okay, no, I haven't gotten a lot of words in. As soon as I say something, like blah, 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 and the audience can't even hear what I'm saying. I'm looking at the comments.
Okay, really quick, Shazare, and then I do want to move on to other people because they're waiting. Go ahead. Okay, I think we cannot hear you. You got to unmute.
Wait, are you talking? I'm muting myself. Are you talking to me?
Yeah, go ahead and finish what you were saying, and then I want to move on to other people.
Okay, no, but I was just in hindsight saying that she just accumulated enough delegates to actually be the presumptive nominee. Now that she is the presumptive nominee, she's able to formulate her own agenda on what she sees fits for her presidency. When you are second in command, you are now at the behest of the person in which is leading the party, which was Biden.
Okay.
That's not Cap.
Okay. I'm going to move on. She knew about this a year ago, FYI. And if you have time to make a website and ask people for money, you got time to take money, you got time to come up with a platform. I'm going to move on to Be Easy here, reparations.
That's just been shifted from Biden website to her website. That's all that is. It's
knew
the
this
same
a year
website
ago.
from
Well,
Biden.
maybe she should have
She did not know that a year. She did not know that. She did not know that a year ago. She did not know that a year ago.
That's just
No,
she didn't know that a year
yes,
ago.
she did. Yes, she did. This was discussed. This was discussed a year ago. Yes, sir.
This was not discussed a year ago.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Be easy. Reparations. And I know you're probably voting. You said if you vote, you may vote Jill Stein or you'll vote for the couch.
Correct. Yeah. So one of the candidates do have to put forth the reparations. Even some people like to make the excuse, hey, well, it's never going to get passed. So ask people, do they support it in principle? And even as a candidate, it's up to you to put forth the policies that you believe in and advocate for them. I heard the brother bring up some of the trans issues. I don't know anyone that was running on gender affirming care in trans bathrooms, but there's many places where they changed to trans bathrooms because they advocated for it. That wasn't a popular policy position, but they said it's not about popularity. We believe this is morally right and morally just, so we're going to fight for gay marriage and all this stuff. And I support the trans community. They stand on business. They say, hey, look, we want these bathrooms, we want this, and we're going to advocate for it, regardless if you think it's going to pass or you think it's popular or not. So when people say, oh, I don't even know if it's going to pass, it doesn't matter. Do you believe in principle? People say this is a Christian nation. Well, what would Jesus do when it comes to reparations, right? So if you're a Christian and you believe in morality, it's up to you as a politician, as a policy advocate, activist, whatever, to make the argument, because all of the arguments against it could be easily debunked in real time, but it's really up to the politicians to make the argument. And that's even more of a reason, if you know it ain't gonna get through Congress, then you get the special brownie points of saying, hey, I was the one stomping for it hard. When people were saying for Medicare for all, right? No one thought that was gonna pass, but they wanted to force the vote based on principle, based on it being a just policy position for everyone to have health care for all. Did it pass? No. But did that stop people from rooting for Bernie and still wanting universal health care? So if you believe reparations, if you thought it was just for Jewish people, and all of the other collective groups, why would it be unjust for us? So whether you believe it's going to pass, whether you think it's popular and your neighbor is going to hate you, as someone who believes to be logical and principled, it's up to us to make the legitimate argument. And let the policy and the political chips fall where they may.
All right, let's go ahead and bring in Lawrence. Lawrence, you kind of quiet. I got to bring you in earlier.
Yeah, reparations, right? So this is the easiest one I would say to say we could pull Kamala if we organize versus Trump, right? This is the easiest one. It's reparations. And furthermore, Obama, I never full-throatedly endorsed reparations, let alone HR 40. So I don't know. I heard you say that she might have done something along those lines, but I haven't seen her fully endorse it. But if she's talking about studying it, I know she's been more explicit about it. Kamala.
Okay.
And so I'm saying we could push HR 40 over the line. Again, it's a show. I know it's weak, but what I'm saying is, like, between the two, it makes sense. And I don't know what else we can get her to do. I want Black people to have tax-free for 400 years. And I know we're going to net zero wealth by 2050. And I also understand, again, I'm going to bring it up just to point it out, Pan-Africanism means that Black people exist that have been suffering in this way. So we should be less divided when it comes to that, when people come over here. But to be straightforward and simple, again, and short and quick about it, we just need to make sure that Kamala is pushing reparations over the, I'm for it. I think that HR 40 is the basic. I think that's.
But your first choice is Cornel West, right? Doesn't Cornel West have reparations on his platform?
Oh yeah, he's racial justice with Cornel West is a no-brainer. Obviously, I would argue that he's squared away with that. I'm sitting up here as a backup for Cesare.
Okay. Poor Cesare is like, God damn, why I say yes to this panel?
I'll reiterate that I have not. I'm not going to shame anyone in any direction because it's clear to me that people are at different levels and they just need to fight. I think the quickest or most succinct explanation of my stance is we need to organize to pull all candidates toward our issues. And in the short run, obviously, we want Kamala to come to us on those issues. And if we can get her over, we don't have to backtrack. And I know some of y'all disagree with that because either way, that's up in the air. That's a solid question to have. Who's the lesser evil? But I'm just saying maybe it's blue because that's closer to us.
I just want to reiterate,
please.
I do vote shame. I vote shame like a motherfucker because so for example, I do believe in reparations. And I believe that it is, if you are a black person who has lived in the States or has parents who's lived in the States, you have a responsibility to put, I don't care who the hell you're voting for, first of all, if on this issue, if you don't hold them accountable here, then why the hell are you voting and talking about what other issues you want? Because we're talking about immigration and all this other stuff that affects our community. But the one thing that we are owed, not hypothetically, but legitimately, we're not going to get. And I'm not even talking about slavery. Like, yeah, we can go with make the slavery argument, but I like to talk about it from the argument that I can actually win because technically my people weren't there. So I'm Caribbean, so I'm Bayesian. I wasn't here, so I got to make the other argument. Because, for example, after the Great Depression, right? Y'all know all the banks were forced to close, including the black banks. The problem is the black banks were in the green. It was the JP Morgans that were fucking the economy over. But whenever they passed the Federal Housing Act and FDR did his thing, he forced black banks to close and killed off our wealth. He disallowed us from building houses in the communities we wanted to build them in, getting loans and grants in the communities we wanted to get them in through redlining. And the last case of redlining, which is literally a Jim Crow law, was prosecuted in 2014. So when we're talking about reparations, we're not talking about reparations from slavery. We're talking about systemic oppression by the government that came through legislative form that we can prove in a court of law. That is what's crazy to me. If we can't even gather around this issue and be like, look, I'm voting for Kamala, but she need to get this shit together. Look, I'm voting for Jill Scott. She's doing it, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't care who the candidate is. We got to be able to come together on this issue because we can't get what we owed while we're working together. Then we're not about to get shit else. So there's not really any point in discussing black issues.
That's a really good point, Nico. Torn may have to leave in just a second, so I do want to bring in Torn, and then I'll go to Dana. Torn, what's your take on this, on reparations?
Well, first of all, I want to speak as a foundational Black American. My people have been here since the 1700s. There is absolutely, first of all, I'm 100% behind reparations for African Americans. Now, as far as what kind of candidate is going to help us move the needle as far as reparations, I don't see any of them doing that. I think what has to happen is people who are concerned about reparations for African Americans have to constantly be on the backs and then on the necks of these candidates and make sure that that information and make sure that this issue is at top of mind and also at top of our priority as far as what we want as far as policy. I saw the other brother, I forgot his name, said that Kamala said she wants to do another study, but we already have a study. People think that HR 40 is a reparations policy. All HR 40 is a study to determine the feasibility of having reparations. And I think people get that twisted. First of all, that study, while I think it is important, it's been stalled since 2000 and it's been in Congress floating around since the early 1980s, damn near. But I hope I'm not wrong on my dates. But we don't need another study on reparations. All you got to do is go into the Black community and look around if you need a study on reparations. But if you want to go back and go through the history of this, like the brother just said, the history of systemic discrimination, the history of Jim Crow, the history of political violence and political terrorism that African Americans have faced since 1619, and ever since, if you want to go back before that, to 1555, even if you go to the point, even if you go up to 1776, there is a long, historic, documented pattern of discrimination and disenfranchisement that Black Americans have suffered that needs to be redressed. And I think it's ridiculous to say, for even regardless of what side of the aisle you follow, whether you're a Republican or an independent, third party, or a Democrat, to say that we need another damn study for that, when people who have been over here far less time are able to get more reparations than we have. I mean, look, Japanese Americans were interned for what, 3.5 years? And even though it took them 20 or 30 years to get there, they still were able to get recompense for what they suffered. Look what's going on in Israel. The United States still pays money to Holocaust survivors, and there was no Holocaust in the United States. That was Germany that did that. That was also, ironically, Ukrainians and also other people who were allies of the Third Reich who helped go push along with that. But outside of Germany, which actually pays through economic reparations, the United States is the biggest remitter to Holocaust survivors in Israel of Holocaust reparations. There are so many different precedents that are lined up for different populations in the United States that are receiving recompense for wrongs done to them by the United States that it's ridiculous to say that Black people don't deserve reparations. Now, I think what needs to happen, though, I think a lot of people need to get a lot more proactive about pushing this issue forward, because we get so caught up, and I'm going to go off track a little bit here. There's this issue that Black people politically have been doing since the 1950s, where we feel like for us to get recompense and for us to get respect as human beings, we have to go around and hug everybody else. I think what's happening now is you're starting to see people who are Black Americans start to say that, look, what about issues that are endemic to us? What about issues that are specific to Black Americans? What can we do to build for ourselves? What can we do to build as a collective and build as a separate identity? That doesn't mean that we have to attack anybody else. That doesn't mean that we have to disregard what everybody else is going through. But we as Black Americans have specific issues that need to be addressed in the United States. And there's nothing wrong with saying that these are the things that we have to be concerned about. And we have to focus on those instead of going out and trying to be everybody else's friend, especially when you're trying to be friends with people who don't like you in the first place. And we got to be real about that, like I said earlier. There are a lot of people who are in this country who have anti-Black psychological problems dealing with Black Americans. We have to be able to say that we are Black Americans. These are the things that we need. These are the things that we need to be recompensed for. And we have to put policy in place, and we have to elect people. And we also have to have actual advocates in place who are able to take these grievances to the government and build on that and create policy. That's all.
That is well said there, Torrin. I totally hear that. Okay, I want to bring in Jay and then Dana, then Colin.
Hey, what's up, everyone? So as far as reparations go, I'm personally, in favor of lineage-based reparations for, people. I think Torrin was onto something when he spoke about how Black Americans have specifically, been targeted since the start of the country. So when you consider slavery and Jim Crow, I think that's a unique issue that needs to be addressed separate from what happened in the Caribbean and South America and all that stuff. I believe it was Lawrence who argued in favor of a Marshall Plan. Well, I would say I agree with, what he said there, but it's not really just on America, because the Vatican was also one of the biggest proponents of the slave trade. So was the UK and, Portugal. So, it shouldn't just, I think in order for reparations to happen, you need to focus it, on the people who were impacted the most, which seems to be Black Americans. So even though I'm a Black immigrant, I wouldn't include myself, in that conversation, because, race-based reparations are just unconstitutional, according to the law. But lineage-based reparations are actually constitutional. So, that can pass, and it's a lot easier to make that argument. And you can specifically identify, who receives the reparations in that case. So, that's the issue that me personally, I don't think RFK has, all the way right. So even though I agree with him on, most issues, I do wish he was in favor of, lineage-based cash reparations for Black Americans. That being said, he does have a targeted community repair program that he wants to implement to help build up the poorest communities in the country, many of which are going to be Black communities. So that's something to consider. And he has also already indicated his support for the money that was appropriated to Black farmers, actually, for reparations and discrimination that happened against them. So he is in favor. It seems like he's open to lineage-based reparations. However, I wish he was out there pushing for it harder, because I think it's something that needs to happen. And I think he does get that slightly wrong. So that being said, I think a lot of his other policies, are do disproportionately benefit the Black community, since the Black community, unfortunately, has been targeted for so long and it has worse economic indicators. I think the Black community would get lifted up disproportionately by, his home program, his home ownership program, and, reining in inflation, because, that impacts Black people more. That housing problem that, everyone is talking about, this impacts Black people. Inflation and BlackRock, are contributing to that and making it worse. And he's the only one who's shown the bravery to take on intelligence agencies. And if you look at what's happened to Black leaders, like throughout, he's
Jill Stein, you gotta be fair. You gotta be fair.
No, but she doesn't call out current crimes. I've never heard her call out a current crime.
She called out genocide in Gaza, Jay. What about that, huh?
But that is in the CIA.
What, since we talking about it,
involved in that. No, we'll get to Gaza. Don't worry. But now listen. All I'm saying is this: the most recent crime I can point to that we know the CIA is directly involved in is the lab leak cover-up, because the CIA got directly involved in pressuring the scientists at the NIH to say that COVID came from nature instead of the lab. So
we can't. Well, we can't. This is YouTube, so we're gonna have to. We'll have to table that.
I forgot where we're at. Okay, yeah.
Hey, Sabby's monetized. We gotta chill with the science juice. All right,
we gotta. Vaccines are safe.
Men in Black come into Sabby's house now. Relax now.
Yeah, we'll have to do that for like we'll have to do that as like a Rumble Rock fan.
Rumble Rock fan.
Yeah, it's Twitter Spaces. We gotta take this as Twitter Spaces, man. Get a little panel going. So
okay, let me make sure I bring in Dana and Colin as well. Dana, reparations, and also, do you think this is something that Trump could be moved on?
Yeah, he already mentioned it. Unlike Kamala Harris, who, by the way, lineage does come from Irish slave owners, but and all the presidents come from lineage of slave owners, except for Donald Trump. But he is the let's make a deal guy. So he did mention it when he said, yeah, am I for reparations? Sure. I don't have he did say that it is congressional, which it is. It's a congressional act. It doesn't matter who the president is, but he said that I will talk to Republicans and talk to Congress to persuade them to come up with something when it comes to reparations. No other president ever said that. They always say study, 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 study. Well, we don't need any more studies. So you have federal reparations and we also have states. I know a lot of grassroots organizations that are doing a great, great, great job when it comes to state reparations. They are putting the time in, the resources, and they're making sure that it is specifically allocated for Black Americans. I don't even use African Americans because I'm a Black American descendant of slaves. So, which is very important that you do go by lineage. So with Donald Trump, he said, yeah, I will talk to Congress to persuade them to vote on it, because we all know Republicans say no. Democrats, they don't say no. They say study, but their actions say no. We Black people have a voting block in Congress. It's called the Congressional Black Caucus, that we vote in your state every 2 years and every 6 years, and you send these people to Congress, to advocate for you, and they always come up empty-handed. And I always say that this election is, we need to be focusing on Congress more so the president, because if Donald Trump is elected and you have a Democrat controlled Congress, you can't forget about anything, reparations or anything for Black Americans with a Democrat controlled Congress. Our Congressional Black Caucus does nothing for Black Americans, and they have not been doing anything for Black Americans. And partly because Black Americans do not fight and push and stay on their asses to do anything. And then two, the CBC is so focused on LGBTQ and Israel and everybody else, illegal immigrants, except for Black Americans. So we've been taken advantage of for so long. So when you talk about reparations, yes, there's federal reparations and then there's state. And I will encourage everyone to really start where you're at locally with reparations and build it out. and pay attention on who you're sending to Congress and have those conversations. And you really need to start getting into the science of politics when you're talking about public policy, where you live at, because it's going to bridge out to the federal government. That's where you could gain your power on a state level. So as far as reparations, of course, I am pro reparations and I am pro restitutions for Black Americans, but we ain't going to get it under Kamala. She's a liar and she's an idiot. Joe Biden is C now. He doesn't even know his full name by now. But at least Trump did say, I will talk to the Republicans and talk to Congress as a whole, because it's going to take a congressional act to pass reparations on a federal level. So we need to pay attention to the Congressional Black Caucus. If everyone in a Congressional Black Caucus and they do head certain committees, if they sit up here and say, we have enough study, let's start talking about money and payments, we will get somewhere. Reparations is not going to happen overnight. And I tell people this even in the grassroots and just Black people in general. If you are serious about reparations and pushing and fighting for it, yes, it's cool to have these discussions, whether you're on social media or on X, but you got to be willing to put in at least a decade to fighting for public policies. Because when you create these public policies and laws, people think that you could just create a policy or a law within a year. Sometimes law takes 5 years or 10 years. But if you're willing to dedicate years to that, then yes, we'll be able to receive it no matter who is the president. But I feel as though we will get it. Well, we will have an advocate for it under Donald Trump.
Interesting. Let's bring in Colin. Colin, how do you feel about reparations?
I might speak on this a little differently because I'm one of two immigrants here. That being said, and I'm going to say this in relation to Jill Stein because I know she does have a reparations platform that she has presented. The thing that I'm a little concerned about, and I think this is something collectively as Black people, regardless, and I'm going to speak more in the diaspora sense, regardless that if you're living here or if you're in Latin America or if you're in the Caribbean or whatever, because I'm coming from a more Pan-Africanist standpoint, because we have that commonality of us being enslaved and brought to the Western Hemisphere. So I am going to speak from that context. Given that, though, at least I think as far as the data that I looked at, I think reparations, the approval rating of reparations is low. I think it's something around around 13%, I think, approval rating in the country right now.
About the percentage of Black people here? Is that what it is?
I think just I think overall.
Yeah,
overall, not Black people, but overall. Just
no, I'm saying because there's only 13% of Black people in the country, so it makes sense that it wouldn't have a high approval rating. That's what I'm saying. Right. It's about the same amount of people.
We're talking as far as oh, we just have to talk to these politicians and then they will, they will wheel and deal for us. And I think for me at this point, I'm just kind of tired of talking about everything more in the theory and rather take the action in order for us to make something happen. And I can say this even with Jill Stein, the question that I have for her, if I were ever to ask her, is what would she do in order to make reparations more viable? Because even within our communities, especially and you can say what you want as far as the Black community, and I would even argue people among the Black community aren't even for reparations either. So that's a reality that we need to speak up among ourselves. But in terms of the larger populace, how would you make reparations viable for people to understand why it is necessary for Black people? Because even in the left community, I fight with people even in my community who feel like Black people don't need reparations. So I think there's a lot that needs to, I don't want to say discussion, but there needs to be a lot more discussion really primarily among ourselves as Black people to make it so that reparations is a lot more viable, so that if it comes to a point where there is a study or whatever, that more people in general are for it. In the same way that universal healthcare, I will guess right now, is a lot more popular now due to the idea of it being fighting for over the last few years. So that's my concern for all of these politicians, and that's especially for Jill Stein, is what is her plan to make it viable for people who are not non-Black, to make people understand the need for reparations just across the board.
You do that. That's what we got courts for. You do that by telling people, number one, it's a debt that is owed. Yeah, and what's also interesting is that we shouldn't have to. We shouldn't even have to go through all this for descendants.
I totally understand that, Sabby, but here's the thing: even in our communities, we have people who are like, "Oh, why do I owe reparations to you?" Or thinking like, "Oh, it's their money that they're going to be taking in order to give to us." Which,
but see, that's where delineation comes in.
I will say this to, let me finish for 1 sec. I'll just say this to everyone who's watching and just anyone who might watch this afterwards, because I think it was Jay who kind of hit it on the head. Like, for people who are non-Black, you're not paying reparations. That's not our issue. The issue is with these corporations and all these big banks that have you basically prostituted ourselves for centuries. Like, my beef right now, it's not necessarily with the U.S. per se. My beef is with King Charles, because being of Barbadian descent, like it was the British that brought my ancestors to Barbados and Trinidad. So and I would argue even for Black Americans, if, as Jay said, if you're going to take this issue up with the United States government, you need to take this issue up with the British as well, because guess what? This country became independent in 1776. You guys landed here, like, depending in 1619. That wasn't America back then. That was the British that brought you here. So that's why I want to say generally is that this.
I'm not picky. I'll take them from both governments. I'll take all the money from both.
Really quick about where it comes from. The debt, it comes from. So General Sherman is the one who made the promise of 40 acres and a mule, which apparently they started doing that for some people, but then that was completely like abruptly halted. I highly recommend, and I can't push this enough. I think it's really important that everybody read Dr. Sandy Darity's book, From Here to Equality, because he breaks down where it comes from, the data, and he also lays out the case as to why canceling student debt and baby bonds will not close the racial, wealth gap. But reparations would be the thing to do it. So it comes from General Sherman. He's the one that made the promise. And I would also add, I don't see people pushing back on reparations as a debt that's owed for other groups. We have consistently seen where other groups in this country, we ain't got to name who they are, but I think we all know they are still getting some form of reparations. And I think it's also important to add to people, when I say reparations, I'm talking about cash payments, because some people are taking the term reparations and they're using it as to like, oh, a housing initiative. No. There is cash payments. There's a debt that is owed to descendants of slavery in this country. So go ahead.
Can I argue from a legal perspective?
Wait, 1 second. I need to ask Colin a question. I want to follow up what he was saying, because you were saying, to educate the masses here in America on reparations or the purpose for it. And I understand your point with that. If people are confused, but make no mistake about it, Black Americans don't need favor from non-Black people, because Asians, white people, whether you're Jewish or whatever, refugees, whatever, they didn't need my approval or not. They just got public policies when we're talking about public policy. Yeah. So I understand what you're saying. Educate the masses.
Here's my counter to that. I will argue that Palestinians will probably get reparations a lot faster than Black people will. And I will say that. And I will say that. And people you don't have to, if you mention that idea generally across the board, given what things are happening in the Middle East right now, I would argue that people will probably understand that. But for some reason,
hold on. Can I? Hey, really quick. Has anybody else worked in the legal field? Has anybody else worked in the legal field? Can I address?
Just 1 second. The reason why they're going to get it is because of Congress that sympathize with them more. But also, you said that you speak on a Pan-Africanism, talking point, talking about reparations. That does not work for reparations when we're talking about Black Americans, because you and other Caribbeans, you have your own reparation claim via CARICOM. Did you know that?
Yeah, he knows.
Yes, I do.
Hey, can I? Real quick. I'm trying to argue for the legal perspective, because unless anybody else worked in law,
that don't mean you know about the law.
So hold on. Give me 1 second. Has anybody? Hold on, really quick. I'm trying to answer the question that Colin is posing. I'm trying to answer. Hold on 1 second, everybody. 1 second. Colin. Her point is, because there's a point that's being jumped. Her point is the popularity of the policy is completely and totally irrelevant. Whenever there is a debt owed, you take somebody to court, you process them. If the damages are owed, the damages are owed. For example, in the case of Jamal Truelove, whenever Kamala Harris put his ass in jail and tried to give him life, and we found out she basically paid off a witness to get him prosecuted, that was overturned, and guess who had to pay for the damages? The people of San Francisco paid $13 million. Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second. Hold on, Dana, really quick. Hold on, Dana. Dana, let me cook real quick.
Hold on, real quick, Nico. Sorry, I've been trying to tell you guys in the private chat. Torrin has to go, so let me just let him get his thought real quick, and I'll come back to you, Nico.
I know people love the sound of their own voice in here, but just a second, I promise. Listen, what I'm going to say is this. I'm going to speak to what Colin said from a marketing perspective as somebody who works in media. I think what has to happen, and you're absolutely right, a lot of times what we're dealing with are people who don't know the history of Black people in their struggle in America. Even with a lot of the information and a lot of the education that has gone through the American system, people have a very short attention span, especially in America. And I think what has to happen is there has to be some form of almost like a PR campaign to make people understand that reparations is not coming to take money out of your pocket. It's not coming to snatch your paycheck out of your wallet. This is about a debt that's owed to people who have been brutalized and suffered and been already suffered in this country. Even if you go back and look at what happened with the whole situation with Black Wall Street, how many people were around when Lovecraft Country was on, and also The Watchmen? And you saw so many people in America saying, wow, I had no idea that that's what happened in Tulsa until they saw it on TV. You know what I mean? This is how people learn. And I think you have to start really creating curriculums, and you have to almost start creating a campaign to make people understand that reparations is not about coming to take something from you. It's about paying a debt that has been owed to people that have suffered and been brutalized and been savaged in this country. And I think that's what has to happen. People, unfortunately, in the United States don't really read anything. Unfortunately, I hate this. And I'm saying this as somebody who writes. The only way you can really get people to understand stuff is if you put it either in entertainment or if you put it in a way that people can understand. And to your other point, I think that what has to happen, and Jay mentioned this earlier, I think some of the pushback you're having against some Black people about reparations is this idea of, like I said earlier, about this lack of understanding of what the history of Black slavery did to Black Americans in this country. Also, it ties into the fact that a lot of people, as you said, are maybe coming to America from a different culture. And because maybe they are not able to partake in lineage-based reparations, then they don't want anybody to have it. But like you said, your people are from Barbados. I think people in the Caribbean who are under the British Empire, they have a case for reparations with the British government. People in Haiti, absolutely have a case for reparations with the French government, because the French government basically forced Haiti to pay reparations for almost 200 years, which is why Haiti is poor. There's different levels of reparations with different governments and with different oppressive governments. But I think people have to be educated first and understand what's going on. And that doesn't mean that everybody's still going to be on board with it, but you have to give everybody the basis of what people want something for and why they want this and give them a process to get to it. But you have to make them understand what's going on. That's
right. Lorraine, actually, thank you for saying that, and I really appreciate you saying that But I think within the Black community, that's kind of where I kind of see there's a divide somewhat, because because this is personally what I've heard, you know, just over the last few years, just being online, is the idea of like, oh, well, your ancestry comes from the UK, so you take care of your stuff over here, and us Black Americans are going to take care of our stuff over here. And I get that within, like, depending on the region of the Western Hemisphere you're from, you're going to have different, it's going to look, reparations might look different depending where your lineage ended up, but it's still the same idea in terms of having, as Sabby is saying, having a debt that is owed regardless if you're from once upon a time from Africa. And so all I'm saying is, yes, I do agree as far as Black Americans, there's a specific case for reparations for you. But all I'm saying is that collectively, this must be a discussion that among the diaspora, we should be discussing anyway, because there are things that are happening within CARICOM, because I know Mina Bartlow has spoken to the Prime Minister of the UK, I think maybe over a year ago, and talked about reparations for Barbados. Like, I don't know if anyone in the Black community has known that, to be quite honest. I reported that on my show. But this is the idea of, like, we need to have that education, understanding what's happening within the diaspora in terms of reparations, so that we're able to kind of pull together, ideally, our resources to kind of make the case collectively, given our different regions that we're based on.
I just feel like we really don't need. We keep talking about education, but we really don't need everybody to be educated on reparations. That's what I'm trying to explain to everybody. There is no need to educate everybody. I know that, like, there's a want to, but the reality of the situation is, yes, Torin, I do love the sound of my own voice. And second of all, you don't have to be educated to organize a legal case, figure out classes, figure out where your qualifications in each single class put you at, for how much when you got here, how much your family owed, when you if it's Jim Crow based reparations versus slave based class versus, there are different ways to deal with this through the legal field that don't require anyone to understand the case for reparations except the best damn Black lawyers in the country. That's what I'm trying to explain. It doesn't matter who we educate. We need people who are experts on the field, who are willing to challenge it. And the most we might need are organizations that are dedicated to funding the constant battles at the state and federal level to get what is owed. When you sue somebody, you don't sue and then be like, hey, Congress, is this okay? Is this cool? Can y'all pass this for me? No, you sue and you get the damages. You sue and you get what is owed. That's all that has to be done. The extra stuff is nice, and we should. I mean, I don't really care if you think we deserve reparations. If we can make an argument in front of the court of law, which is that's how a lot of people, like Native Americans, that's how. Go ahead.
Who are you going to sue?
You sue the federal government. The federal government gets sued all the time.
I get what you're saying, but that is not how you go by getting reparations.
That's definitely sue the government for damages. That happens all the time.
No,
that literally happens all the time.
Not for reparations, not for restitution. It's a congressional legislation that has to happen. No. That's what I'm trying. That's what I'm trying to explain from a legal perspective. Hold on. Here's what I'm saying. Dana, hold on one second, because I'm trying to explain to you, because I've worked in law before. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. So what I'm trying to explain to you is, you're saying that there is restitution. Hold on 1 second, please. You're saying that there's restitution owed. That is literally a legal term for damages. In other words, someone did something to you, and someone did something to you while you were living posthumously, that you have to now argue your case to receive the damages. You're wrong. We agree.
Hold on. Sabby,
next topic, please.
We agree on reparations, but you are wrong saying the way to get it, you got to sue the government. That's not how you get reparations. That is a fact.
Let me just look. I had to mute everybody really quick, because I do have to tell everybody we got about 10 minutes left on the panel. I went way over time, so we got about 10 minutes left on the panel. Just FYI, because I do have a call in also that I'm doing after I have 3 news segments, and I have a call in after I'm doing after the show.
You're doing a show after this?
Yeah, I still have 3 news stories to cover as well, but I went way over. But I just want to add really quick, just to wrap up the reparations part. I think I hear where both of you are coming from. Just FYI, I did interview Judge Joe Brown and recently, and I did ask him about this. And I think what Dana is saying, Judge Joe Brown said it has to be done through congressional legislation, because the reason why the case in Tulsa didn't work out, because I said, Judge Joe Brown, they could just sue the state. He said, you can't sue the state. So that
no, but for reparations, you would have to sue the state. You could sue the federal government, but what people, okay, so for example, hold on, for example, how many times Dred Scott? So because Dred Scott he lost, that means that there's no case? No, because if that was the case, then we wouldn't be in the situation we're in right now. Just because something gets defeated in one court, like gay marriage was defeated and defeated and defeated, interracial marriage was defeated and defeated and defeated, it just means the case was not strong enough, or you did not see the right judge.
Anymore. What are you defeating? We're not slavery. So you're talking about you're talking
That's not how damages or restitution works.
No.
That's not how. Okay, hold on.
No, you have
Dana, please.
Concept of it wrong. No, you're wrong. Nico, you're wrong.
Nico, I think
oh boy.
So I don't know what happened. I didn't mute you.
StreamYard is funny. StreamYard's been.
I don't know what happened. Yeah, I didn't mute you. But I think the Dana is
this is intense.
Dana is correct here about the process. Nico, we can't hear you.
My man, that's
we can't hear you at all. I don't know what happened. Seriously. But Dana does have a point about the process.
StreamYard be muting people.
Sometimes I guess so. She does have a point here about the process. Yeah, because we did have this conversation. I did have this conversation with Judge Joe Brown. And so the thing is that the people who are responsible for the crime are no longer alive. So it's not like we have someone we can go to and sue. Just like with the Japanese Americans with reparations, it was different for them because they had the harm was still alive. So we can't, there's no one directly for us to sue. This is the way that Judge Joe Brown explained it.
And then
I don't know what happened, Nico.
But that's what I said earlier when I say
it as well.
Yes. And I interviewed Marcel Dixon about this too. And they all explained like this process. Also Yvette Carnell, I interviewed her about this. That's why we can't just sue. So I think that's the thing. It's something like we all need to, I guess, at some point have a discussion about.